Okay, good morning everyone. Okay, we are back to our class of New Testament introduction, and this will be week number 10, the last week of this class. We are covering the knowledge regarding how to understand the New Testament as a whole. This would be different from the study of each book. So New Testament introduction gives you the idea about the whole New Testament, and we had covered the theology, and then major characters, and we'll continue to discuss the major characters that are who appears in the New Testament, which is 27 books, and except the Revelation, which should have some prophetic and symbolic characters. Other narratives, like a full gospel plus the Acts of Apostles, those have real characters. And also, even though it's in the form of letters, episodes, so-called, those episodes include these real characters who are mentioned in the letters. So we are looking into those major characters, and especially when you're trying to understand a narrative or study narrative, the character study is one of the key main method of studying the material. So we had discussed Thomas. We'll just go over it a little bit. He is known as Doubting Thomas because he's the one who had doubted whether this Jesus who came back to supposedly resurrected would be the real person or a ghost, or indeed the same Jesus that he had known. So he doubted until he actually touched him and put his finger on the wounds that Jesus had on the hands and feet, and then in his waist. Then he confirms himself. So I think that would be the very, actually doubting Thomas would have some negative connotation when you are giving that kind of nickname. But for me, it is a very necessary and not only natural, it is a necessary step toward a true, firm and solid faith. If someone believes something without even testing it, we don't think that is a good faith. So doubting as a process of confirmation would be very necessary. But doubting once you're already confirmed, and then come back and doubt the things that you supposedly believe, that is a different kind of doubt. So this doubting Thomas, he just wanted to make sure that this resurrection and then the person Jesus Christ is real and true. So that kind of intellectual doubting, or doubting as a process of a rationalizing process, would be a necessary and needed thing to do. So doubting Thomas, I would say it is a very positive connotation and then nickname for Thomas. Tradition holds he traveled outside the Roman Empire to preach the gospel and traveling as far as India. Jesus invited Thomas to touch his wounds. So he supposedly killed in 72 AD, and this we have no way to confirm. So that's a story, or the rumor, or the oral tradition that we have on Thomas. So again, he is one of the martyrs of the apostles, except John, who has not been killed. He lived his natural life. Other apostles were all martyred. So next, Matthew. Okay, Matthew is the one who had written the Gospel of Matthew, of course, and he was mentioned as a tax collector, possibly for Herod Antioch. Antipas, not Antioch. Antipas. So generally, we know the tax collectors have bad reputation because not only they are working for the colonial government, including this so-called puppet king plus the Roman Empire. So they were thought to be the in Korean we say apjabi. Apjabi is a name for those who had served for a Japanese government or Japanese people during the time of a Japanese occupation, illegal occupation of Korea or colonization of Korea. So they were called one of those who served Japan, and also the language of this apjabi, the character who's parasiting to this false or the unjust power, also happened in Korean history during the Korean War, where there were quite a few people who had served the communist North while they were occupying the South. So that kind of concept is used. There was an understanding of the tax collectors. So we see a couple tax collectors that are mentioned in the New Testament, and one of them is Matthew, and the other is Zacchaeus, the short guy. So they are known to be the characters who were hated by the general people. So Matthew was a tax collector, then he converted and turned to become an apostle. He is also called the Levi, the son of Alphaeus, and that's how they named people in the time of Jesus. I mean, you mentioned the town, and then father, and then the actual person. So that's how they knew who they were talking about. He is the author of the Gospel of Matthew, and it says as a tax collector, he would have likely have been literate and well versed in several languages. So that's an assumption, but it is certain that he must be able to read and write pretty well. And plus to that, he should be at least be able to speak the Romans, the Italian for today, and also possibly Greek. So the speaking in Greek and then in Roman, Koine Greek was a common language like today's English, and it was a global language. So we can be almost certain that he was able to speak and write the Koine Greek, and plus the Roman, which is Italian, plus the Aramaic, Hebrew language. So that's Matthew. So he's a very intelligent guy with a lot of experience with the government and then people. So then famous Iscariot, Judas Iscariot. He's one of the initial 12 disciples, as we know. And he's the one who betrayed Jesus. Excuse me. The main reason that he decided to betray Jesus was because he was disappointed. The reason that he was disappointed was he was expecting a political Messiah, meaning the Messiah, the king, the power guy, power figure, like a hero, who would come and destroy the whole Roman Empire or Roman rulers and the forces in a very supernatural and miracle way, because that's what they were expecting as God's power of God, Almighty God. So for them, it wasn't natural for the people to expect this superpower kind of guy, hero, coming in with a very solid and mighty militant power and wipe out all the Romans and all the unjust from the face of the earth and establish the kingdom of Israel, which ought to be the center of the whole globe. This idea of a certain ethnic group being the center of the world is not just limited to Jews. We find it all over the earth, even today. For example, the name of Korea, the official name that we call ourselves in Korea is Taehanminguk, means the greatest country out of all the people. So there we go. And also Junhwa Mingo. Junhwa Mingo also means China is a center of the whole universe. So each nation, they kind of want to look themselves as the center of the whole universe. And the same idea there. And because Judas was expecting this political Messiah, eventually at the end, toward the final week that Jesus was crucified, he realized this Jesus of Nazareth that he had been following for 3 whole years, it's not going to be the political power. So he decided to sell him and betray him and get the silver coins, 30 talents of silver coins instead. Eventually he commits suicide out of remorse or out of, we're not sure, whether he killed himself out of remorse or out of shame or out of anger. We're not sure, because he's already dead. That person don't speak. So that's Judas Iscariot. The lesson that we find from the Judas is this all happened in a church. We have many different kind of members in a church. Some of them are very genuine and very pure motivated, and that they just want to worship God and to be true to God. But there are those who comes into the church expecting to something that is different than what a church should be. It could be political, it could be economical reason, or it could be a sexual reason sometimes. Because, the people in a church, usually they are innocent. Especially the girls. And there are guys who are trying to get the advantage of this innocent ladies and girls. That happens in every church, in every ethnic community. So we need to be aware of that. And then another reason that the Judas in the church would be those cults or the heresies who come into the regular normal church to draw out some of its members to their own sect or the own cult. That happens a lot in Korean American churches today. These heresies that are born out of Korea, they come even to America and other parts of the world to draw, to bring out these genuine Christian members. So there are a lot of different kind of Judas in today's modern church as well. So we need to be aware and beware of these kind of, how should we say, deceitful members of the congregation. Mary Magdalene, she's a follower of Jesus, one of those female follower of Jesus. Usually, in the time of Jesus, these ladies and girls were not counted as a person. So when they count the population, the girls and then anyone who's under 12, they were not counted as a full person or full human being yet. And with considering that context and reality, it is very unique and special to mention the name of any female figure in the Bible. So it's an unusual thing to write a girl's name on any documentation, unless that girl is someone who had committed a serious crime. And in the Gospel, Mary Magdalene, and there are a few other ladies whose name has been marked and mentioned. So are in the Acts of Apostles. We see Lydia, and also we see the who's another lady? There are a few mentions of Lydia in the Acts, and then in the Apostles, there are other women who's mentioned several times. So this Mary Magdalene is a very special person mentioned in the Gospel. She's the one who anointed Jesus' feet with the perfume, and she's the one of the women who discovered empty tomb and witnessed the resurrected Jesus. known as Mary Magdalene, and she's a sibling of Martha and Lazarus. So she is very well-known female figure in the gospel. So if we try to put her the position just as one of the disciples, she is almost as high as the Peter, who is the number one apostle in the kind of rank, if you rank it, or the importance of the character. Mary Magdalene, would top that position or rank in regards to the importance. So she's a very important person in the New Testament. And the thing is, she is not studied as much as Peter is, due to the male-focused, in history, even in Europe, especially, in Asia, it is, of course, but the ladies, the female gender was regarded less than men. That was a very common practice in many cultures until most recent. So regarding that, because of those reasons, Mary Magdalene, the Mother Mary, and other female characters in the Bible was not studied as much as all other male figures in the Bible. So if you try to balance, if you're studying the New Testament, try to balance those intensity of study on both male figure. If you study Peter extensively and intensively, then you would have done the same thing for Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus. So that's my suggestion, and we need to further do more character study on these ladies in the New Testament. Lazarus, the brother of Mary Magdalene and Martha, who are in the gospel story. And he was dead, and from the very unknown illness, and Jesus came back after he was in already 4 days in a tomb, and Jesus brings him back to life. So this is a very unbelievable kind of story. And it's not like a resuscitation that we see today, but some resuscitation record even records, it does say the person was dead for 7 days, whole week, and came back to life. So that is recorded in a modern time, and there are many witnesses who would testify for that fact. So resuscitation does happen, medically speaking. Yes, it does happen. And this guy was dead for 4 days, and Jesus, with his power of the Holy Spirit, he brings him back to life. So this miracle is so excited the Jews that they sought to put both Jesus and Lazarus to death. It is very, strange for someone who is brought back to life, and there is someone who brings the dead to life, and the people try to kill them back, including the one who exercised that power, and then also one who's been dead and brought back to life. That's very abnormal thing to do. So you can ask a question: what goes in their minds? they are filled with hatred, they are filled with jealousy, and they are filled with evil. So that is a kind of evil that we still see in today's world. And it's getting worse, as we know. So the evil of people, I mean, why would someone try to kill someone who just came back to life? No, it's insane. And the Bible, the New Testament, does record they tried to kill both Lazarus and then Jesus. So that shows the story. That shows how evil can a person become out of jealousy and hatred. Martha. Martha is the one who also is a sibling of Lazarus and Magdalene, and she is also a very dedicated and devoted follower of Jesus. Then she is portrayed as a person in charge who welcomed Jesus into her home and tried to serve Jesus and did a lot of work. And then later Jesus comments, wouldn't it be better for you just forget about the house chores and trying to serve me and come to my feet and then listen to what I have to teach. So it tells about the priority issue. Of course, this life the reality requires us to make money and to work and to the chores and to deal with all the stuff that goes on in our daily life. We need to survive and sustain. Of course, yes. But when you have to make a choice between worshiping God and getting something that is necessary to sustain your life, what would be your choice? So the lesson from this the story where Jesus came into Martha's home, and then Mary was at the feet of Jesus listening to what he has to say, while when the Martha is going out and trying to serve and prepare the meal. The priority is just listening to Jesus and get the teaching. So that decision may come into your existence, your life, and your reality, and you need to make a very necessary and wise decision. Yeah. So that's called a Christian priority issue. And sadly, many believers, or so-called Christians in the church, would make a decision to survive and to sustain. Because it's immediate, and we think it is important. And they say, I'm doing this for my family because I love my family. But Jesus said, there comes a time that you need to make that decision of priority, whether you're going to serve your family or serve God. We hope and pray that kind of dilemma and conflict would not come in our existence, but the reality is there are many occasions and challenges that demands that kind of decision, and some has to make a decision of choosing a lifetime job, just like myself and other missionaries and pastors. You need to make a decision between being a full-time minister or just get the job that can bring some money and stability of economic status. Being a pastor is not so stable kind of job, and there isn't that many job opportunities for pastors or any ministers or missionaries that will provide a certain level of economic stability. So that is a decision of priority. It's an example. So you ought to face many of those challenges as you try to live as a faithful, devoted Christian. See, faithful, devoted, and committed Christians certainly would face these decision issues, the decision regarding a priority. And Martha is a good example where Jesus given that teaching. Again, Nicodemus, one of the well-known famous figure in the story of Jesus. He is the one who actually came to Jesus to visit him and to meet him in person, one-on-one. So this is a case of one-on-one encounter with Jesus. And we as a person and as a Christian, there was the opportunity and occasion that you need to decide to come toward Jesus. Whether you have a very key, important life question, or you need to know, that ultimate question, who is Jesus? Who are you? And who are you to me? That would be the key question that Nicodemus had when he decided to come to see Jesus. He was able to do so because he is one of those high official in the time of Jesus. He's a member of Sanhedrin, which is more like a Senate in United States, or those assembly members in many other countries. So those are only, at the maximum in Korea we have 300 assembly members. But in the time of Jesus, Sanhedrin members were running like a 30 or somewhere there, 30, 32, 33 at the maximum. So that means as one of the top 0.01% of the whole Jewish population. So he's almost like ministers in today's term. And he comes to see Jesus at night, to avoid many eyes, because everyone knows who he is. He's a well-known celebrity in the Jerusalem, so he has to hide his face and come at night secretly to ask this very question of, how am I going to be able to enter the kingdom of God? Or in an easier translation, how can I be assured of the heaven after this life? So Jesus already knew his question in his mind. So Jesus didn't ask, and he said, you have to be born again to inherit the kingdom of God. This is a very strange language for him, to be born again. They never used that kind of language in the Old Testament or anywhere else. And Jesus is using this new concept of being born again. He was very, not only shocked, he was estranged, meaning he's confused to hear this language of being born again. So he asked Jesus, do I need to go back to the womb of my mother and come out again? And then Jesus explains that's a physical birth. I'm speaking of spiritual birth. So you need to be spiritually born again of water and the Spirit. So that's how Jesus explained the process of being born again or becoming a Christian. or becoming the follower of Jesus Christ. And then he understood the message, but he is still struggling. But in the later record, it shows that he is the one who had helped Jesus in many different ways. So he is mentioned later in the gospel as well. The Nicodemus story is written in I think it's a book of Gospel of John, chapter 4. But his name is mentioned later in the John's gospel as well. So we know that he went through this kind of long, sort of a duration of time, certain period of time, trying to, kind of rationalize or to understand who Jesus is. So for some people, believing in Jesus happened as a very one event and incident. Like a case of Paul. It took him like 3 days to realize who Jesus is and that believe in Jesus. For Peter, it took him 3 years, even though he started his apostleship or his discipleship by confessing that, you are, to Jesus, you are the Messiah, the Lord, the Son of God. But that confession was like if you read through whole gospel, it might been, I'm not certainly saying it, but it might be his lip service. But as the days go by and the years go by, at the end, he was certain that Jesus was the Messiah. But yet he did fail 3 times. And we will see that when we come to case of Peter. Anyway, so Nicodemus, it took him several months or more to eventually decide who this Jesus guy is. So it took him some time to elaborate and work on his own faith. Okay, we jump to the episode Onesimus. He's a unique character in the New Testament, and he doesn't appear either in the Gospel or in the Acts, but his name appears in the epistle, letter of Philemon. When you go into the book of Philemon, his name is mentioned, and he's one of the runaway slave. Slave is not the worker who is being paid, but slave is a belonging of the owner. So the servant and the slave is a 2 different thing in the Bible. So when you read the Bible, especially when you look at the parables of Jesus, he doesn't use the word slave, but his parables always he's using the servant. Servant is not owned by the master, but he is the one who serves the master and being paid. The slave is not. So he's a runaway slave. He doesn't have any position. He's not a person. He's a thing, according to the time of Jesus. And same thing. I mean, we know that a slave system in the in America as well. The black Africans, they were brought and then sold as slaves. So it's just a possession. They are not person or people in that time. So it is very unique and strange to have a name of a slave written in the Bible or for any document, any official letter or document. So this is a very special case. And he did met the Apostle Paul during his imprisonment and became a believer. So Paul had a very special feeling and very personal relationship with Onesimus, which shows Paul, after his conversion, had a respect for every and any person, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, or the position in society. Today, many Christians, even though they call themselves Christians, does not follow the example of Christ or Paul. And they rate the other people in a certain way and have a different attitude and way of relationship with this according to their rank. Usually, it is very sad and very, how should I say, troubling to see a pastor of a church dealing differently with the congregation according to their wealth. This is not being a Christian. For a pastor to do so, it gives a very bad example to his or her congregation. And saying it is okay to differentiate and the level or rate the people, which is your congregation, your sheep, and then deal with them differently. It's a discrimination toward those who are not getting the attention, and it's a false kind of attitude. So the example Onesimus shows that every believer is the same, even though Onesimus, is politically and socially and legally a slave. He is still a believer. Once he comes into your congregation, then he is just same as any other believer that you have in your congregation. But out of the church, then you have to maintain the slave to the master relationship. So there is that difference. Even as a slave to master relationship, you want to be a good, generous, and a just master, not an evil master. So that's how the Christian principles apply toward those who are ranking socially less than who you are. Then Philemon is the master of Onesimus. He's a friend and a fellow worker, that's quotation, and of Paul, and recipient of the New Testament letter that here bear his name. And he's an important member of the Church of Colossae. So we know that Philemon is one of the top leaders of the Church of Colossae or Colossian Church. Then these are the Caiaphas, the high priest who presides over Jesus' trial. So these are so-called, what we call antagonists. Antagonists are the ones who are against the main characters of the story. And our main character is Jesus, and this Caiaphas is against Jesus. He's the one who judges and leads a trial and sends him to Pilate, the governor of Palestine. Through it is a Pilate who declares the verdict of Jesus. The gospel writers are insistent that Caiaphas is also responsible for the crucifixion. The reason that we are saying this is, what if Caiaphas said that he made a very just, balanced, fair judgment and said, this is our religious matter and we'll decide on our own. If he did that, then Jesus would not gone to the Pilate's court. Again, if Caiaphas followed his own conscience, said this person has no evidence or weak evidence to be judged as the for the for the blasphemy, which is Jesus is accused of. That's a religious thing. But by bringing him to the court of Pilate, he becomes a political criminal rather than religious criminal. So there is a very big difference. Blasphemy is, of course, when it is determined and confirmed, it is worth of the death, killed by stoning. But they did not have that evidence. And Caiaphas, if he believed Jesus to be the Messiah, all these things would not have happened. So by making that decision to bring him to the court of Roman governor, he tried to wash his hands off. He didn't want to have the blood on his hands. But with that decision, he still is not escaping from that heavy historical the labeling of being the dumb and the very coward priest at the time of Jesus. So that's what Caiaphas says. The lesson is, we also may face that kind of dilemma. Either you're going to be judged or you're going to have some disadvantage or loss when you confirm yourself, confirm Jesus to be the Messiah. And we already made that decision, and that believing that Jesus is indeed the Messiah. So once you make that decision in your heart, and if you're firm about it, then when we face this kind of dilemma, our answer should be, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to continue to believe in Jesus. That should be our decision. That should be your, the positive and proper attitude for any believers. Okay, let's take a 10 minutes break. Caiaphas, Pontius Pilate. Yeah, he's the one who made that judgment or sentencing of Jesus to death. So that's okay. He's the governor of Judea, and he is one who, had the power, the political power over the land of Palestine. He's a representative Roman Empire. Because of that position, he is not able to make his own personal decision, but there is some room for it. And he was able to, if he wanted to, he could have dismissed Jesus, because there wasn't enough evidence. But he eventually made a wrong decision, but he served the purpose of God. There are these kind of figures who will make his or her own responsible decision, yet at the same time will serve God in a way to fulfill the prophecy. So is Issachar Judas, so is a Philip, so is the Pharaoh of the Egypt. These kind of figures in the Bible are non-believers. They're acting as antagonists, but they help out eventually how the history is going according to the plan of God. So he is. And he held the ultimate authority to determine whether or not Jesus should be executed. And that he did make that decision to execute him. He had to choose. Again, this is a dilemma for him, but he had to choose whether listen to the people of Jewish people so he can prevent the rioting, or he could make his own decision according to his own conscience. His own conscience said, this guy is just nobody. He's no political danger, or he's not going to cause a riot, or even though he had many followers, those are religious believers, not the political power body. He knew that, and then yet he made a decision that is pleasing to the Roman Empire, plus pleasing to this majority of people who is chanting, just hang Jesus. And he made that decision according to the popularity or the people's want to avoid any political instability. So that's how most of the decisions today is made on the level of the political and governing body. They do follow these general principle, just same as Pontius Pilate. When we make that kind of decision, you may please people, or you may avoid the more serious consequences like political turmoil or instability. Yet, they are not just or righteous decisions. Every day, those who are in the power position would have this dilemma. Not only a government level, but the same dilemma happens within your church. Because a church is a body of believers, is an organization, is an institution. When there is a people group or group of people coming together for a certain reason or certain motivation or certain goal, then it creates power. Whether you want it or not, it does create power. If you're 3 or more, then there's always that power situation. When there's a people power or power given or power created, then you cannot avoid to have this politics. And you can have a good politic or bad politic. The Bible teaches good politic is to make good decisions and to lead the group according to biblical teachings and principles. That would apply certainly to a church. That would apply to any kind of grouping, including in the business. But especially for church is a body of people who are making that context a reality according to the Bible. But sadly and unfortunately, many leaders in a church would make the same mistake Pontius Pilate or Issachar Judas made, because they have wrong intention, wrong motivation, or other motivation than to serve and worship God and His people according to the Bible. So when that is happening, the church is going to corrupt, and church is not going to be the church that God wants it to be. The thing is, probably one out of 10 churches would be the proper church, to my understanding. So today's church, 9 out of 10 churches are not following the power politic of the Bible, but rather power politic of people or people's the trend. So we learn from Pilate, even though you're not in the position like a governor of Roman Empire, still your leadership would have a certain domain that you exercise your own political power or power politic. And then you need to make that decision according to the Bible rather than something else. Okay, post-Pentecost characters. What I mean by post-Pentecost characters is Jesus was ascended to heaven, and then follows those 50 days, actually 49 days, they were praying together. Because they believed, what they believed at the time of Jesus is this: once he went up to heaven, he's going to come back soon, pretty soon, within weeks or months. So they began to pray and waited for Jesus to come back. And they didn't understand when Jesus said, I'm going to send a comforter instead of me, and he will come to you in place of me while I'm away, and he will lead you guys in faith and in existence, in persecution, and so on. They didn't realize what he meant. So they kept praying until 49 days were filled, and then came this thing called Pentecost. So after the resurrection of Jesus, the Holy Spirit comes upon them. Those who are praying, 120 people in the upper room of Mark's home. They were praying together, and the Holy Spirit came upon them. And that's what we call the Pentecost. And after that incident, the first church was born. The official, the Church of God, Church of the Holy Spirit, born from that moment at Jerusalem, beginning at the place of Mark's home, and it was spread to whole Jerusalem. And then on that day, 3,000 were added to the disciples. So as an explosion of Christian expansion and the church. So from that incident, there are the characters that are mentioned in the book of Acts and then in the letters. Here's Matthias. Matthias is the one who's been added in the substitution of Iscariot Judas, who killed himself. And then, so instead of 12, we have only 11 apostles or disciples, the disciples. So they need to, fill up that vacancy, and they choose Matthias by making the vote, and he was chosen. Tradition holds that he planted the faith along the coast of Caspian Sea. Okay, so we know where Caspian Sea is today, the same Caspian Sea, and he worked around those areas as a missionary, and possibly stoned to death. So Matthias, again, except John, all 11 disciples or apostles were killed by someone because of their faith. Okay, next, James. This is a brother of Jesus, known to be. But it has a question. But there are two different Jameses. So James, the disciple, and then James, the brother of Jesus. Not the believer until after Jesus' resurrection. So, it is understandable when your own brother is claiming to be the Messiah and you're grown up with him, and it's hard to believe that your own brother is the Messiah. Even though James might heard from his mother the birth story and everything. And then the brother would have witnessed what Jesus did, all the miracles and so on, yet he was not. So he's the one also, again, took that process of time and process of doubting and confirming and doubting back and so on until he make that final commitment and decision. So again, it took his lifetime, James took his lifetime, almost 30 years, to make that decision that indeed his own brother is the Messiah. In time, he assumed leadership of the Jerusalem church, and originally held by Peter. So when Peter was gone for the missionary work among the Jews, he traveled in the Palestine and the Israel and the Judea, then left the Jerusalem church. So in his place, James, to be the brother of Jesus, would have took the leadership position in Jerusalem church. And that's ordered by high priest Ananus, and was either by stoning or being cast down from the temple tower. He was killed again. So James, the brother of Jesus, was also martyred by all this Jewish power, the religious leaders. Then Jude. Jude is also a writer of a letter in the New Testament, and he's also known to be Jesus' brother, another brother. And he is identified as one of the brothers of the Lord in Matthew, Mark, and also in Acts and Corinthians. So we are certain this Jude, one who is named Jude, is the brother of Jesus, and also called Judas, not the Judas, the apostle. So two different Judas, not the Iscariot Judas. So it's not the same guy. He is also not a believer until after Jesus' resurrection. So both brothers of Jesus did not believe Jesus to be the Messiah until he was resurrected. So that means the resurrection is the big thing. It's not just an myth or some made-up story. If it's not the true, actual historical event, you may not able to explain that a conversion of Jude and James, both the brothers of Jesus, to change their minds. So by witnessing and watching the resurrection of Jesus, they are confirmed. They do confirm themselves, and are certain that this guy is not the brother that we think he is, but he is indeed the Son of God. So the resurrection is actual historical event. Both the most close people, including Jude and James, plus all this Magdalene Maria and Lazarus, and then the disciples had witnessed and confirmed, and that changed total demeanor of the people, or attitude of these disciples. So after the resurrection, they become very courageous and bold, and they are willing to give their lives for the belief. Okay. Paul of Tarsus. This is the Paul that we know, the Saint Paul or Apostle Paul, whatever you call it. Written more than half of books in the New Testament, at least 14 of them. If you include the Hebrews, there will be 15. He's the great missionary, and he was sent by the church of Antioch. If you read the Acts chapter 13, it records how Paul and Barnabas were designated and prayed over and anointed and sent as a missionary to the regions. So there is that first missionary journey, and he takes 3 big missionary journeys to have it confirmed. I mean, to have the gospel is spread among those land. Okay, so and then he uses his keen mind, very intellectual and educated, to develop Christianity's first sophisticated theology. So he is a theologian, and he's well studied. I mean, before he writes New Testament, he's already fully expert in the Old Testament, the Bible, because he was educated by the Gamaliel, who is one of the top scholars of the time, the Old Testament scholars of the time. So he was learned and trained by the best Bible scholars at the time. And then he develops this theology regarding Jesus and his resurrection and the law and grace, the justification, and so on. So the language that we use in modern theology is all contributed to Paul and his writings. Without his writings, we would not probably had this systematic theology or doctrine that we teach today. So God used his ability, his intellect, and his rational mind to record and to write all these excellent documentation regarding Christianity and Christian faith. Plus, he does add how to practice this Christianity. So not only the theological or theoretical aspect of Christianity, he also presents practical Christian ethics and then rituals and practice that would happen within a church. So basically, he has written the full version manual for the church and its believers. So his writing should be regarded as a Christianity manual. And because of that reason, you need to study the Paul's writing very intensively and extensively. He used to be an active persecutor of Jesus' followers before he was converted on the way to Damascus. Later, he converts and becomes the most active proponent of Christ's disciples. Barnabas. Okay. While Paul is a very, very aggressive and active kind of personality, Barnabas was a meek. He was a thinker too. He was a thinker, but more of a F kind of person, according to MBTI. If Paul is a T person, he is a feeling person. Paul was a thinking person, Barnabas more of a feeling person. So he's meek and had a warm personality. He's a thinker as well, but he is very slow to act. While Paul and Peter is the one who acts first and then think. Later becomes one of Paul's traveling companion, and he is a fellow missionary of Jesus. But Barnabas is the one who lead and teach Paul to be a disciple. So Barnabas is a senior than Paul. Even though Paul is more famous to us today, Barnabas is the one who helped and nurtured Paul to be the leader. So Barnabas is a teacher of Paul. Okay, so don't mistake. Spreading the gospel among the Gentiles, just with Paul. And Barnabas is mentioned many times in both Acts and then also in the letters as well. So he's one of the major character and figure. Luke, he is also a traveling companion of Paul. Later on, then Paul and Luke and the Barnabas had a difference in the opinions regarding how they would go about their missionary journey, and they separate later on. So, which means even among these very high devoted leaders, they would have disagreement, they would have conflict, and they would sometimes have to depart one another. Bible doesn't say whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but eventually it helped to spread the gospel to more rather wider and wider region. So in that sense, it was a kind of good thing they were separated, But the separation itself, God does not condone. I mean, the Bible does not condone or say that was a good thing. It doesn't say that. So you cannot justify the division among the church to be something good because the result is a good thing. That's not how the Christian logic works. The process is a process. Process is judged by as a process, and the result is judged as a result. So good result does not justify the bad or less good process. So we need to understand this very well, because many of us who had grown up in this Eastern context, especially the Asian context, if you're limited to China, Korea, and Japan, we have this tendency, because of I think it's a Confucian ideal and a philosophy, the result speaks for the final. But the process is also important. There's this mental mindset among Koreans, at least. I mean, I cannot speak for Chinese or Japanese, but Koreans, when the result is good, everything is justified. So there's that mindset, looking at the result, whether it's an economic success or whether it's academic fulfillment, or even the Christian faith. When the visible result is good, then everything is considered good, which is not what the Bible teaches. Process and the result are two different things. And God does make that evaluation and review and judgment both separately. Sometimes good process may result bad or less, or bad process can result to good or successful. That would not justify the process, bad process. So going back to the Luke, the division that happened between Luke and Barnabas and Paul, that is not good, according to Bible. Biblical principle doesn't say that would be justified, because it did extend the church and the kingdom of God. Stephen. The good things are recorded about Stephen, because he had faced early death. He was a very young man, probably 30 or under. But he was a leader of Jerusalem church, and he was martyred because he preached against the temple, written in Acts, the Acts of Apostles, chapter 6 and 7. And he was brought to trial before the Jewish court, and Stephen, he presented this famous speech and sermon against those who are trying to accuse and then persecute newly born the Christian church. He was bold, and then because of that boldness and his firm attitude, he was stoned to death. And the ironic thing is, Paul, the apostle, was there before he became a Christian. He was the one who was present at the killing of Stephen, and he was the leader. So that's ironic. But later on, I mean, God would forgive that, and also he was used to give the martyrdom to Stephen, that doesn't mean that he is justified, but when he confessed that to be the wrongdoing and the sin, and then because he did not know who Jesus was, he was forgiven. Okay, Stephen. Timothy is okay. He's not. He's considered Jew because the mother line of mothers, his grandma, his mother are both Jews, and he is considered as a Jew, even though the father is a Gentile. He's a traveling companion and fellow missionary of Paul. So for Timothy, Barnabas was a Paul's teacher, and Paul was a Timothy's teacher. And so, again, Timothy was a disciple of Paul. And so Paul taught everything about Christianity, Jesus, and the Messiah to Timothy as a pastor. So Timothy becomes a pastor and a full-time minister. And he's a co-author letters with Paul, such as 1 Corinthians and Philippians. So Timothy was involved in the writing of these two letters, these two letters. And he served as his emissary throughout the Christian communities of the Mediterranean. So Timothy is one of those top leaders, and later, not only he was ministering in a local church, but around the churches in the Mediterranean. So he ought to be like one of the first traveling pastors. We had a traveling pastor tradition in America when they in the early American history, because there were not as many number of pastors that as needed. So certain pastors have traveled like 5 or 6 different churches in the area and preached on Sundays. So he would start the first service at 8 in the morning and 8 church, and end up preaching the last sermon in the evening somewhere in other town. And they rode in horses and traveling these towns in the time of early American history. So again, coming back to Timothy, he's very devoted, and he is what we call mixed intercultural marriage or interracial marriage, and but yet he is the one who is smart enough to learn from Paul, and then was a pastoring. Apollos is one who's been discipled by Priscilla and Aquila. Again, here, the Priscilla is a female leader, and Aquila is a husband of Priscilla. See, this is a very unique and special in the time of Jesus and the time of apostles, because again, I told you, the woman is a second rank. It's like a second-class citizen in any of these areas, both in Jewish community, Jewish culture, and also in Hellenistic culture. Women are considered as a second-class citizens. And to have wife's name, or the female's name at the first, is very unlikely. That's not how they written the name of the couple. If they need to write the names of couple, Aquila, who is a husband, his name should come first. But all the records that you find in the in the New Testament, Priscilla comes up front and then follows the name of Aquila, the husband, which means Priscilla took the leadership, more important leadership position in the church, which is very unlikely and strange. So that means she had that much positional power and the role and importance in the church, early churches. And Priscilla and Aquila, they are known to be tent makers. And Paul and these couple become very close friends because of Paul also was a tent maker by vocation. His job was tent making. And then Priscilla and Aquila, trained and discipled Apollos. The name Apollos suggests he would be more of Gentile. It doesn't say, but he's an eloquent, educated man with well-versed or well-educated in the scriptures. Again, just like Paul himself, he is an expert in the Bible. So theologian and then teacher is Apollos, just as much as Priscilla and Aquila. So one thing that we learn from all these New Testament characters, especially the post-Pentecostal character, is the importance of the Bible, the scripture. So those who are expert in the Bible are the leaders. Meaning, all the leaders, the first requirement would be the character, of course. I would say, as a pastor, I would choose, well, if you have to choose a leader or set up the leaders, establish your leadership in a church, first thing I see is their personality and character. That's number one thing. It doesn't matter whether he or she has a very good education or have graduated a good seminary, that doesn't count. Unless he or she has their very personality and characteristic that is taught in the Bible. So I see that. And then second thing I see is their devotion and the commitment. Is he or she gave 100% of his or her life to Christ? So that's the second thing that I see in our leader. So Apollos, Priscilla, Aquila, Barnabas, Timothy, and Paul, these characters meet those requirements first. Then the third thing that I see is the depth of their understanding of Bible. I'm not speaking of the amount of the knowledge that they would have in the Bible, but that's a secondary. What I see is their depth, not the width. How he or she understand the Bible correctly. That's the thing. So if you meet these three requirements, then fourth thing is their skills and their ability, their leadership skills, leadership ability, how they communicate, how they make the decisions, what his or her priorities are. These are the next thing that I would look at. And then you'll establish or make that person a leader of the church. So by looking at these characters, we learn that what the requirements for a good Christian leader. So the Apollos and the Timothy, even though they are the disciples of Paul and others, they were respected by these leaders. Okay. Achilles, married to Priscilla, came from Italy to Corinth after Claudius ordered the Jews expelled from Rome. So we know that Priscilla and Aquila are both Jews and were kicked out of Corinth. The Italy, the Rome. Became Christians and assisted Paul in his ministry, and tent makers by trade, as was Paul, and instructed Apollos in the Christian faith. Okay, so those are the major characters that we see in the New Testament, and the minor characters you probably want to study yourself. Okay, continuing with we'll jump to the lesson 7, which are major episode in the New Testament. Begin with the birth of, the Gospels, as you read, it begins with the so-called nativity story, the birth of Jesus, birth of Messiah. And to go into the birth of Jesus of Nazareth, it does give us certain introduction about the birth of John the Baptist. So John the Baptist is one of the main figure in the story of Jesus' birth. And so is Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist. And so this is how the birth story is summarized. So birth of John the Baptist, and then we see the story of Augustus giving an order for the census. Census meaning they wanted to have exact number of people in certain area. So in that time, in today's census, the government people come and visit your home and, do this survey of how many people live in your house and how many of your family live in outside your home and so on. So that's how they get the exact the number of household and who are living. But in the time of Roman Empire, ruling Jerusalem and the Israel, they wanted them to go back to their birthplace and then be counted. So they had to travel back to where they were born. Because of that was probably the fastest and easiest way for them to count the number of head. So that order was given. Then we know the birth of Jesus, how he was born in the town of Bethlehem, and was born into not the room, regular room, but was born in a so-called as animal pen, meaning where the animals are sleeping. So that's birth of Jesus. Then we go into the childhood of Jesus in the gospel. And in Matthew chapter 2, it does record a visit of the Magi, also called wise man. Usually we think it's a 3, but the gospel does not say 3. The number 3 comes because they offer that the gift 3 gifts, right? So they kind of assume each magi or wise man brought 1 gift each, and there were 3. But I'm sure there were more than 3. So visit of the wise man, then that is not something happened when Jesus was born, actually. Most likely a year or 2 later, 2 years later. Because when the wise men visited, the gospel clearly says they went into the house of Mary and Joseph, not the city of Bethlehem. So it would have happened in the town of Nazareth. So this wise man came to visit and see the baby Jesus, still probably a year old or 2 year old, and they came to worship him. So the picture that we see usually in nativity story, where the Jesus was laying in a manger, and then the Joseph and Mary is sitting behind the baby, and then animals, and then here are these 3 wise men worshiping him. That is historically, I believe, is incorrect. So that's 2 other events: birth of Jesus in Jerusalem, and it should be the shepherd who are worshiping Jesus. That would be the correct picture. Then later on, these wise men came probably a year or 2 years later, and then worshiped Jesus. Then, because the Herod made that order to kill any male baby who is 2 years or younger, then Jesus had to escape. And they fled to Egypt and then came back later on. So slaughter infants were recorded, and return to Nazareth recorded in 2:23 of Matthew. And the boy Jesus at the temple, that's another story that is recorded in the Luke only. He was about probably under 12 or age of 12. He went to the temple with his parents for the occasion of Passover, to celebrate Passover to Jerusalem. And then he was continuing his study or dialogue with these wise scholars or scribes at the temple. And parents did not know that. So that was recorded. And then famous statement made by Jesus: "Didn't you know that I should be in my Father's house?" Meaning the temple. Father being the God, the Father, the Yahweh. So that was a very bold statement to make for baby Jesus. I mean, the child Jesus. Even though he was 12, he made that statement. And that kind of confirms himself to be the Messiah. All this confirmation of himself claiming who he is. Okay? So thank you so much for being a good student, and this will conclude our study on the New Testament introduction, and I hope to see you guys probably in the fall semester for another topic of study. And thank you, and see you guys. Have a good day, sir.